Hello, Star Wars fans, and welcome to the Star Bros podcast. We hope you're having a wonderful day. We certainly are here where it is thunderstorming, so you might hear a little bit of that in the background tonight, but I am joined as always by my bro host, Jan Solo.
Yes, we're on Exegol, and I'm joined by my bro host, Ben Skywalker.
And maybe soon to be Camino.
Maybe soon to be Camino, yeah.
Right?
Let's hope not.
No, I don't really. You get some pretty crazy floods here on your street.
Yes, we do.
If it rains a lot.
When it gets really rainy, I go out my driveway and I fight the Fets as they try to board Slave One. And we were just watching that scene because we have Attack of the Clones on. But yeah, we get a ton of rain here, and hopefully that doesn't happen
I thought you were going to say something like, I get my kayak out and I just go, paddling down the road or something.
I've seen that. There are some people who
I'm sure,
practice the art of accepting. And there are some people who try to, bail the water out of their basement, but then there are other people who are like, I'm just going to get in the kayak and watch it all flood.
I'm going to go to the store in a kayak. That'd be really cool. I want to do grocery shopping that way. That'd be fun.
You
How are you doing,
to shop
man?
light.
What's that?
You just have to shop light. You can't.
Well, yeah, exactly. You don't want to weigh the boat down.
Yep.
That's a weird place to start. How you doing, man?
I'm well. I'm excited about tonight's topic. We're going to be talking about lightsabers.
Yes.
And to prepare for the episode, I was on the YouTubes, and I found a video that I'd never seen before, and it was I don't know if you've ever heard of the Graham Norton show, but I think some of our friends in the UK are certainly familiar with it. But it was an episode of Graham Norton that had Chris O'Dowd, who is the actor.
I know that name.
You would recognize him from some recent American comedy movies.
That narrows it down.
Yep, but he's also in the IT Crowd on Netflix, which our bro host Chris Ryan's turned me on to, which is a really cool show. But he's a comedic actor from Ireland. And he was a guest with Ewan McGregor. And I guess to surprise them, Graham Norton, when they came on, busted out a toy lightsaber and gave it to Ewan McGregor. And he starts sort of swinging it around. He's doing cool stuff with it. And then Graham Norton gets out a couple more. And they all have lightsabers, and they like dim the lights on the stage, and they're acting out, a duel, which we'll be talking about. But the thing that really got me was Chris O'Dowd started asking Ewan McGregor, when you got to set and they gave you a lightsaber, did you make the sounds? Like most of us grew up with this stuff.
That's exactly what we all did when we got a lightsaber in our hands.
Yes. Right. And he gave an example he said that, and I'd never heard this before, and we're in the Philadelphia area, so I feel like we should know this. But when they made Rocky, apparently Sylvester Stallone, couldn't help himself, and he, made all the punching sounds. And then apparently, yeah, so he was as he was acting out the fight scenes, he was like, and apparently that made it really hard for the sound folks to finish the movie because they had to figure out a way to cover it up gracefully.
Oh, that's hilarious. That was kind of like Laura Dern, who plays in The Last Jedi. What is it? Holdo, thank you. That's like the parts where she comes in and she just can't help herself. She has to say pew. And so if you look really closely, she's going pew, pew, pew,
yes.
and she's shooting off her blaster.
Yeah, and if I were ever to sit down at a console in an X-wing or the Millennium Falcon or whatever, I'd be I'd be hitting all the buttons going beep bop bop boop because that's the sound that the buttons make in my head. And if I definitely got a lightsaber, I would kind of swing it around and make all the sounds. And then Ewan McGregor started saying of course you do that.
That's what you do.
And when you get it in your hands, it makes a very specific sound when you turn on the saber. And then it makes a very specific sound when the saber is done and you turn it off and whatever. And you started making some of those sounds. So it's good to know that Ewan McGregor was a big kid like all of us would be on set.
Oh, yeah. Most of the time I just imagine a lot of those actors are just big kids at heart. Yeah. And they're doing they're basically sword fighting for a career, right? And they're making a lot of money doing it. So good for them.
Yes, they're living our dream too. And especially the people who really want to be there, like Samuel L. Jackson, really wanted to be there. He probably had so much fun every single day.
Yeah, totally. And I love that he's just I want a purple one. Can you get me a purple
one?
And
let's make it purple.
Here you go. I got a present for you.
So
cool.
That's my long way of saying I'm doing great. I'm excited to be talking about this topic tonight. There?
Let's talk about the lightsabers today. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
So I got to tell the audience. So this is one of those things when we talked about doing a podcast at some point, I was really excited about, but I didn't want to waste this when we were still kind of building a fan base, right? And now that
both of you are here,
last time it was 3, it's 2 all of a sudden, dude. Who's going to be listening to the next one? My wife, and that's it.
It could be, but
Maybe.
We're glad to have you, Susan.
Oh man, but. This is something that I've just been really excited about and wanted to make sure that we saved for a good episode. And this is episode 25. And so I feel like this is no better time to talk about our favorite lightsaber duels and the significance that they have in Star Wars. Because as I was thinking about it and preparing for this episode, which, by the way, to prepare, I literally watched every single live action lightsaber battle, went through all the movies, rewatched them all, and picked my top 5, which we'll talk later. Now, for the record...
Are all of them from the movies?
All of mine are from the movies.
All of mine are from the movies.
And I did that purpose for the longest time. I was like, no, I'm going to throw a few of the animated ones in there. But the reason I stopped is because they're distinct to me. They're very different. And there's a lot more of them. And I feel like I needed to, instead of trying to fit them in with the significance of the storytelling that's done in the movies, like respect that they're on their own and rank them separately. Because I do have some favorite ones on the animated side too.
That's a good point about them. There's a lot more in the animated series.
Right.
It's not like constant saber dueling in the movies. Like it's sort of they save it for important interactions and important exposition, and like they're infrequent enough that it's a big deal when there is a big time lightsaber fight.
Totally. And we'll get to all the other thoughts that I have on that in a little bit, because I want to respond to that, but then I would start going and monologuing into stuff that I want to save for later.
Okay.
So how about instead we do our first part of every episode, news from across the galaxy. Pew, pew. There, no, those are good sound effects.
That was pretty good
for this.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Throw in the lightsaber ones. Did we have anything big happen in Star Wars in the last 2 weeks?
Well, no. So actually, I want to throw one in that we didn't discuss ahead of time. And that is on May 4th. I don't know if you guys saw this, but on May the 4th, they did release a 10-second trailer of Disney is going to be coming out with a new, more realistic lightsaber.
Yes.
I don't remember if we talked about that on prior episodes or not, but it feels appropriate for us to touch on it now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of speculation about how it works.
Isn't it like retractable, basically?
It's retractable. It looks really cool, but like one of the things I've noticed is there's a girl who's dressed as Rey in the commercial.
Yes.
I'll call it a commercial.
Yeah.
Who turns around and then, she turns on the lightsaber, and like there's just something very like mechanical about the way she's holding it. She's not waving it around or anything like that like you can with like the plastic ones. And somebody said that they think that there's something about it where you couldn't like bang them together, like it's a hose that's filling up or something like that.
Oh, really?
But it looks really cool.
It's supposed to. It's about, they really worked to make this one look accurate. Yeah. As if it was a real life, obviously it can't cut through anything, but as if it was a real life, oh, thank goodness, lightsaber.
Yeah.
Right? So good on them to do that.
Yep.
Now if you can just heat it to whatever Kelvin to be able to cut through steel and stuff like that, then you got yourself a perfect lightsaber. But I feel like we're still decades away from that.
I think you're right, but it's cool. Like if you Google lightsabers for sale, there's a lot of people who make them.
Yeah.
At like in their home workshops and stuff, and like the sky's the limit. You can spend $1,000 easily.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, that's one thing I really want to get is one of those kind of lightsabers. But one day. No, what else happened? So Ming-Na Wen went to Instagram, and sorry, I'm moving on just like that.
That's okay. And by the way, that's where I get all my news. Is from the Instagram.
From the Instagrams?
Yep.
Yeah? Oh. Well, Ming-Na Wen went on her Instagrams and posted that it looks like they are officially wrapping Book of Boba Fett. Woohoo. So it looks like they're on target to hit the end of the year and what they're trying to do in getting that series out before. I think in December is what they committed when they flashed that across the screen, at the end of season 3 of Mandalorian. So, yeah, it looks like they're on pace. It looks like we're going to be getting some Book of Boba Fett by the end of the year, which is really exciting. But
that is good news. I've mentioned before that I love Star Wars around Christmas time. New Star Wars content around Christmas time is my jam. Yeah. And so I'm happy to see that. I was a little bit worried.
Me too.
They threw it out there. They, December of last year, they said December of next year.
Yeah.
And then we had our ups and downs with the pandemic, and I was a little bit worried that they wouldn't hit it. But if they're done, like principal photography, they're going to get it done.
They're totally going to do it. And that was what was surprising for me, was just with the time period in between when they announced it. And probably, I think they did start filming beforehand, but it just goes dark. Usually, especially for like the Marvel movies, like you hear all the development and where they are today filming, and look at this picture that we just got to with them in the streets, and it looks like they're going to do XYZ during the movie, blah, 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 and they start speculating. You don't get that with Star Wars. Right. Part of it is, I think, because they're filming in the volume for a lot of the things. Like, so they're in a building. You don't see them. They're not on set. But then I know they're doing that with these, with Obi-Wan series coming and things like that. Like they're filming on set, and so or on location, I mean, and you get like little leaks here and there. You didn't get anything with this one.
That's a good point. I didn't see anything. You're right.
It was just quiet. So it's nice to hear that they wrapped and that they're on target. So, and Ming-Na Wen looks like she was putting together some really cool wrap gifts for all the people on the set. So
cool.
It just makes you wish that, I don't know, in another life, my wife and I talk about this, like she would have loved to work on set and make movies and things.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And imagine just like getting a gift from, you know, one of the main stars of the show and having that for the rest of your life and be like, this is from Ming-Na Wen, and when I was filming Book of Boba Fett, and apparently it's like one of those like cell phone holders that goes around your neck that you can, you know, bend and prop up so the phone is in front of you without touching. It was like because of COVID, they had all these protocols and stuff, and she kept losing her phone. So she ended up getting one of those things and then getting one from everybody else on the set, which is really cool.
Very cool.
And making it like Fennec Shandy. Wow. There's that thunder.
Wow.
Told you it might be happening.
Yeah.
What else do we got in news with that ominous sound in the background?
I have some bad news. Well, it's honestly not great news. But I don't know if it's bad news either. So many of you by now have probably seen a clip of Ewan McGregor interviewing Pedro Pascal. Ewan, who is obviously hard at work growing his beard for the Obi-Wan series. I don't know. Maybe they're filming at this point. I'm not sure.
Should be soon.
Should be soon. I know that he's been working out pretty hard, getting into shape with Tony Horton, who is the guy who came up with P90X, the fitness system. Yeah. Apparently they're bros, and so you know, Tony posts.
I think I got to 1X on that. I didn't get all 89 others finished.
But Tony's been posting pictures of Ewan McGregor working out at his house. So I think he's getting ready to do his stunts, to do his lightsaber dueling and all that stuff. But
very cool.
He was interviewing Pedro, and you know, Pedro, the star of The Mandalorian. And I forget how they got to it, but Pedro basically came out and said, like, we haven't shot anything yet for season 3. We just haven't gotten there yet. So you and I were talking about before the mics came on that we're probably not going to get The Mandalorian season 3 this year.
Well, we knew that we weren't going to get it this year. It was really just a question of how early will we get it next year. And I thought they made it sound like we were going to get it right after Book of Boba Fett.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
I don't imagine Book of Boba Fett being really long in terms of number of episodes, like something like a mini series. Or
yeah,
like
I thought it was going to be a limited run series of some kind.
Yeah, but I don't know. I really don't. So it doesn't sound like we're going to get it right after the Book of Boba Fett, though.
Yeah.
Which is disappointing, but I think they're still writing it, if I'm not mistaken. So in pre-production. So
yeah,
it could be a while.
And my thing is always like, just take your time. Just do good work. Write a compelling story you're excited to tell, and we will be ready when you're ready. Obviously, I'd love to get it today, but you know, I'm realistic.
I think we're getting Obi-Wan before then, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So there'll be other things that will placate us. Is that the word?
Placate.
Oh, shut up. Placate us.
Darth Placateus.
That sounds like a good. Oh, here comes another big thunderstorm.
Yep.
Thunderclap.
Counting.
No.
Maybe
never
not.
mind. Okay, moving on now.
Yep.
Well, with other. Oh, there it is.
Yep.
Now, with other things going on, sorry, all these things that are going on in filming behind the scenes, we are still getting some Bad Batch.
Yes.
So let's talk about the 2 episodes that we got over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Starting with the first one, Rampage. What do you think of that one?
I thought Rampage was terrific. What's the ranker's name?
Moochie.
Moochie. Moochie is like this episode's Clink, or, you know, like I mentioned before, a lot of recent Star Wars content has these like come from behind heroes who we become big fans of, and then, you know, everybody wants a Moochie plushie at some point. But to kind of lead us into the conversation about it, I loved both the episodes, but I think it was yesterday or the day before, StarWars.com published an interview with Michelle Ang, who plays Omega.
Yeah.
And it was a really cool interview. There's a lot of stuff in there that I definitely did not know about her, but also did not know about the process. Like, for example, as she was interviewing, she didn't know that she was interviewing for the Bad Batch. You know, they obscure a lot of this stuff. You just know that you're kind of testing out this character. You're obviously showcasing your ability as a voice actor, but you don't really know what you're interviewing for.
Right.
Which must be pretty cool when you get the call and they say, okay, this is a new Disney Plus Star Wars show called The Bad Batch. Like, that just must be mind-blowing.
They have to give you a little bit, because what if you think you're trying out for something live action and it ends up being animated, and you're like, but I want to do live action.
I think she knew it was animated, but I think that she didn't know much more than that.
Okay.
But what I thought was interesting, and then like I'd love to go back and watch this episode, these last two episodes, and maybe look at it through this lens, or maybe this Friday's episode I'll be thinking about this. But she said that she really pushed back on some things in the script that Omega would say and do.
Okay.
And she said that I think it was like in the first cuts of scripts that she read, Omega was like very kind of like present and sharp and on top of things and wise in a way that Michelle said that maybe a kid doesn't always understand all the big stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
And maybe a kid is maybe a little bit more impulsive with certain things.
Yeah.
And maybe a kid acts from a place where they misunderstand, or they just want to impress people, or they just want folks to like them or whatever. And she started weaving some of that stuff in. And I felt like I saw some of that in both of these episodes, and even prior episodes where Omega's just sort of jumping into things and throwing herself into things, showing her personality and the stuff that we like about Omega.
Right.
But also being a kid who doesn't have everything figured out. So I thought that was an interesting perspective. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I love that. I think that she's absolutely right. And that's the nice thing. I was just watching Raya and the Last Dragon this past weekend with the kids, which is decent. It's not too bad.
What is it?
Raya and the Last Dragon. It is voiced by Raya is voiced by Kelly Marie Tran.
Okay, cool.
Who we obviously know from Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
She had a similar take, I think, on Raya, and saying, I'm going to take this kind of angle when I interpret this line, or ad-libbing a couple things that she thought was just more attuned to the character and stuff. And so they deserve to do that. They deserve to be a part of the creative process as they get into the heads and the minds of the character, and start reading the lines that someone wrote on a page, which is well thought out, right? These writers are really good at what they do. But to say, oh, you know what? I don't know if I'm able to deliver this because this doesn't feel in character for me.
Right.
Like, you respect the people that are delivering the lines and the work that they do to kind of get into the heads of each of these characters every time that they perform.
Yeah.
And so I
think,
love that.
I think that's acting. I think
totally. A
lot of people say like, acting is just pretending. Like there's a video recently with Taika Waititi. I don't know if you saw this, but it was a video about bullying and unteaching bullying, basically, and unteaching racism. And he was talking about...
he was looking at a picture of like his old self, being like, look at this kid.
Yeah. Angelic face and whatever.
Yeah.
He's talking about acting, and he's just talking about how it's just overpaid pretending. And that's true to a certain degree, but I think a big part of it is like what Michelle is talking about with Omega, which is creating a character.
Right.
Like, you have to read the lines and stuff, but you have to create this character kind of from scratch.
From scratch every single time that they pick a new job, which has got to be difficult.
It's got to be difficult, but then, that's when it feels real and kind of comes to life, when a character has its own personality that person creates, and like it's the writer and the actor working together. So,
and she's done a good job, because Omega is, I think, winning over a lot of hearts. I think people at first were a little skeptical, like, this kid coming into Star Wars, like, even though Star Wars is, pseudo made for adults, pseudo made for kids and all of that, we don't really see kids all that often, other than Anakin.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't really see kids that much. And so it's really
a little
interesting.
Boba Fett.
I guess, yeah. Okay, stop it. There are a couple more that we can think of, I'm sure.
But not a lot.
not a lot. It's very much an adult-driven galaxy. And so to kind of see this kid come in here and survive, and how it changes the dynamic of the Bad Batch has been to become the Dad Batch.
Yeah,
has been really interesting. So getting to this episode a little bit, I really liked the introduction of Moochie, which there was a lot of speculation. Moochie being the Rancor, as we find out. There's a lot of speculation of, well, was that the same Rancor as the one that's in Return of the Jedi, and if so, my heart is broken forever. Like, I won't ever look at that scene again. And let's clarify, those are not the same. At least unless they were intended to be. We haven't found out. Those are not the same Rancors.
Moochie is not Patissa.
It is not Patissa the potato bear. Right? They're different. They're just different Rancors.
Right.
Maybe there's a relation, but I venture to say that Moochie is one of many Rancors that he probably has at different homesteads.
Yes.
That Jabba has. He's a collector of exotic pets.
Yeah, and
what was that Netflix series that came out last year about the lions and the
Tiger King?
Joe? Yeah, the tiger, whatever.
That's Jabba with like Rancors and other exotic animals.
Exactly.
Yeah, I could see that. But we had this conversation in the group chat. So we have a BROAXIUM group chat that we always just kind of have going, and we send Star Wars memes and things like that, and it's a lot of fun. And we were talking a bit about how in the High Republic comics, specifically the Marvel High Republic comics, the Hutts are one of the main villains that are part of the more recent story arc, or, we're kind of in the background before and now are kind of coming forward. And it's like, it's the Hutts with an army of Rancors. Like, they just love having them around.
They love these guys.
It's like some people, it's like some people with their tigers, or some people with their pit bulls, or whatever else, or some people with their gator farm. Like, some people just like having big, scary animals around.
Why not? It makes you feel like you're one of them, a big, scary animal yourself, right? It feels cool. Yeah. So that's what my guess is just another one of the Rancors in Jabba's, again, homesteads or something like that.
And that was Bib Fortuna at the end, who and collects Moochie, which was really interesting.
Some other things that happened in the episode that I loved. I love the introduction at the beginning where they're meeting Sid, and that part where Sid ends up finding out. They end up finding out who Sid was, and Sid said something like, "Looks like you're the only one with brains in the bunch, kid." And she just and then Wrecker laughs and goes, "Ha," and gives Omega a high five. That dynamic that's between Omega and Wrecker is just,
I love it.
Gold. Like, this is one of my favorite parts, and that's why it hurts so much to see him go through the brain trauma that he's going through with the inhibitor chip. It's going to be heartbreaking if that ever turns against Omega. I hope it never does.
I hope not. That would be heartbreaking. I agree.
So those were some good scenes. The comedy, I think, was really good in this one. That was the other one. When Wrecker and Moochie are fighting each other.
And they're just like exhaustedly slapping each other slowly, just taking turns.
Just like, I'm going to beat you. Don't worry. Like, I have more in the tank, and they just keep going at each other. That was great.
Yep.
Loved that. Anything else that you really liked about this one?
On the topic of Wrecker, I think right when that episode came out, it was International Donut Day.
Oh, yeah.
And on StarWars.com, they had a step-by-step recipe with pictures and everything for how to make your own Lula donuts.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I didn't, because it looked like a ton of work, but maybe you guys did. I'd love to see your pictures. It's a fun idea.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Would love to see that, too. I'm not much of a baker myself, so you won't see it come from me.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next episode, Decommissioned.
Yeah, what a cool one.
Yeah, this one was interesting. So we got to go back to a familiar location, Corellia.
Yep.
The Bad Batch finished their first job for Sid, and it went all right, getting Moochie, and so they earned a second job. And so they're on to get a tactical droid head, one of the last ones that's remaining, to help try to defeat the Empire.
And why?
And go back to Corellia.
What's in the droid's head?
I think all the data about how to defeat the clones. Isn't that what they said? Their tactical
I was trying to remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So they think that they can have an advantage if they were to just get the intel from these tactical droids that learn their enemy and learn their approach so that they can better defeat them. Mm-hmm. And now that the clones are kind of on the side of the enemy, they want someone out there wants to know how to defeat them.
Yep.
And get some intel on that. So who is that? We don't know. But whoever that is had sent some messengers, some others that do their dirty work. The Martez sisters make a comeback.
Yep.
And this one had a little bit of a mixed reaction on social media. I think when they were introduced in season 7 of Clone Wars, people weren't all that excited for them. I liked them. I thought they were great, but there were mixed reactions.
That's funny you say that. I didn't catch that.
Well, what do you mean you didn't catch that? You didn't get on the Twitters?
I stayed off the Twitters. I think people have been pretty good about not posting spoilers and not posting like big negative reactions to things. But
yeah,
maybe I'm just unfollowing the right people. By the way, follow us at Starburst Podcast on Twitter.
Or it could be that, Bad Batch is... there could be still some apprehension to watching the animated stuff, and so it's just not getting the same viewership that Mandalorian is getting.
That could be true.
Who knows?
I am impressed, though. It seems like a lot of our fellow Star Wars podcasters are...
Everyone's talking about it.
Everybody's talking about it, and everybody's publishing a video or putting a podcast up like at 5 a.m. the morning after it came out.
Right.
So people are on top of it. But okay, so I didn't catch some of those negative reactions, and that's probably a good thing, honestly.
Yeah. Always is.
Yeah.
If you miss that. And look, it's okay if they're not your favorite. I still don't understand why, but they made a comeback in this episode, and they've always kind of been trying to figure out where they fit in the galaxy.
Yeah.
They're from Coruscant, the lower levels of Coruscant, where it's kind of a dog eat dog world and difficult to make a living, and what Trace is kind of a bit innocent and doesn't really understand the double life that you have to lead down there a bit, and her sister Rafa does get that.
Yeah.
And so she gets into questionable traps sometimes. So I don't know, it's just an interesting group to see come back. So I don't know how much more we're getting of them, but I was glad to see them personally.
Yeah, I was too. And there are moments where, going back to Michelle Ang's interview, where you can see Omega be a little bit impulsive. I'll jump down on the conveyor belt and get the head and put myself in harm's way.
But I like that because of the past episodes where she's proven her worth to the team.
Yeah.
That my favorite part was actually when they were running into the building on Corellia, and she was running in with them every step of the way.
Yeah,
like she wasn't being told to stay at the ship or anything. And then as soon as they got in, Hunter gave her a task.
Yeah.
And it was a smaller task, but it was something.
It's real.
It was real, right?
Yeah.
And then she took it on herself to do more. But it was good to see that she was part of the group.
Yeah, and I think her struggling with the bow and arrow thing, whatever that is called, I can't recall.
That was a cool part.
That was a cool part. Her struggling with that, and then her starting to get a hang of it and getting a little bit stronger towards the end, I think is kind of a metaphor for her role in the team and her ability to kind of hold her own with the group.
Yeah. Or even just like Echo trying to teach her and being a little bit impatient, and then Sid coming in there and being like, look, kid, here's how it is. And she responds a little bit better to Sid, even though it's an abrasive style too. She responds better to Sid's approach than Echo's, and that's a learning moment for Echo.
Yeah.
Little stuff like that.
But so the big question is, there's a cliffhanger at the end of the episode.
Well, real quick before the cliffhanger,
yeah.
One more thing. The humor in this was great too.
Mm.
And my favorite part was that part where Trace goes, "Is there an Echo in here?" And then Echo leans on, "Yes, I'm Echo."
That's a dad joke.
That was such a good dad joke. I loved it. It was dad joke on the Dad Batch. But yeah, let's get to the cliffhanger.
Yeah. So at the end of the episode, we find out that the sisters have a video call with somebody, and we get to see sort of the side of them. It looks like maybe they're wearing a cape, and they kind of turn to face them. And they talk about how, what is the gist of the conversation that they have with the hologram? It's
not really a conversation. It's just Rafa saying, "Hey, we ran into some clones, and we figured you'd want to know.
Thought you want to know," something like that.
Thought you would want to know.
Yeah.
So who is this?
And this Friday we'll probably start the episode finding out who that is, or people,
maybe.
or people will just continue to speculate for another week, and it's gone off in a few different directions.
It might not be something we find out because it's like, okay, the Martez sisters have gone their separate way and thing, and we won't find out until they actually go to.
That's fair. We might get another hint or something, or it might just be left to brew for a little bit.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting, good or bad.
That's the main question. I think it's really hard to figure out who precisely it is, but I think a lot of us are trying to guess their motives. And are they reporting back to a bad guy? A lot of people are saying it's Maul.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't know if I see it.
I I go back and forth between a lot of likes that some people said maybe it's Bail Organa or something. But look, there's two questions that you really got to ask. One, who else wants the tactical droid information? Somebody who wants to fight back against the Empire, or is it someone who knows that this presents a threat, that this information is out there and wants to go and retrieve it? I don't know. Could be one or the other. That will decide if it's a good person or bad person. And secondly, where do Rafa's allegiances lie? Again, when we see her in season 7 of the Clone Wars, she's kind of gotten tangled up in the wrong crowd a couple of times and is a little bit in over her head. Is she in over her head again? Is she working with the highest bidder and they don't have the greatest intentions? Is it, a crime boss or something like that? So it's really about those two things. Who else wants this information? Who's Rafa willing to tango with?
Yeah.
So I don't know the answers to those, but those are the ones you got to ask to be able to get to the right answer.
My hunch is that they are that they're kind of mercenaries and they're selling some information to the highest bidder, and that person may not have good intentions. I think it's a villain that they're talking to. That's my guess.
You think it's a villain?
I think it's a villain.
Oh, okay. I think it's a good guy.
Okay, cool.
I think it's someone who's starting the rebellion.
I hope you're right.
Yeah, and it could be someone that we've already seen, like Fennec Shand. Like it could be Crosshair. It could be somebody that's already been introduced.
Joey Palpatine.
It's Joey Palps. He's like, I want the Rafa. Tell me where they are now. Wow, that was weird. I think that should wrap it up for now we should get to more to the story.
More to the story.
So segment 2, more to the story. Let's talk about lightsaber duels.
Lightsaber duels. Like you said, dude, this was when we talked about, should we start a podcast and what would we talk about? This is like one of the main things that you said, hey, I want to sit down and talk about this.
I did. And I'm really curious to know how you prepared for this episode, because I already mentioned how I did it, but what did you do?
I
sat back in your chair and just thought really deeply?
Yes. And then at about 6 p.m. tonight, I started panicking and writing.
Oh, shoot!
But so I came at it from a few different angles. I wanted to have some type of criteria. Like, so the top 5 lightsaber duels based on what? And there are a few things that work their way into my list of criteria, which admittedly were really fluid. So this was not a hard and fast thing where, I wasn't particularly analytical about it in the sense that, I had some real structure and plugged a bunch of stuff in and spit out a list of my top 5. No, this was partly emotional. So it was art and science. So there are certain lightsaber duels that mean a lot to me for different reasons, because what that movie means to me or whatever else. The music plays a big part.
Yes, it does.
I think maybe we'll talk about that.
Yep.
And then the importance to the story, whether it be that episode or, well, I'll go so far as to say that there aren't really many lightsaber duels that are only important in the context of that movie. And all of mine are from the movies. So all of them, I think, play into the broader story in a big way. So when I went through, I found 5 lightsaber duels that I think checked all the boxes of they emotionally tug at my heartstrings, or they're, so exciting that my jaw was dropping in the movie theater and I just kind of fell in love with what I was seeing on the screen. They advance the story or bring to life a major conflict in some way. And I think they, to a certain degree, evolve the characters.
Yes.
So the characters maybe aren't the same before and after that conflict.
So you're getting to a point that I came to a realization of as I was preparing, which is George Lucas's use, I will say any of the creators, so J.J. Abrams included in this, their use of lightsaber duels is very interesting. So they're usually done to move critical pieces of the plot forward. And I mean, so first question for you is, how many lightsaber duels are there actually? Now, when we talk about lightsaber duels, we're literally talking about lightsaber on lightsaber action.
That's a good point, because there are moments where a lightsaber is, brandished and used against a battle droid or wherever else. So,
or the baton in Force Awakens, right, when Finn's wielding it against the other stormtrooper, right? There are other moments, or on Jabba's barge to deflect all of the blasters, right? But that is not a duel.
That's not a duel.
That's just using the weapon.
Right.
And it's great stuff, and it's great to watch, and you love it, but it's different. So all of that is to the side, and maybe we talk about like the cool uses of lightsabers separately, like to cut through things and blast shields or not blast shields, blast doors.
Well, yeah. So I have a list of my 3 favorite non-dueling lightsaber moments.
Cool. Let's talk about those. But the point that I wanted to make was they're really important to moving the plot forward, and there are only a few in all 9 movies. Do you know how many lightsaber duels there are that I was able to count?
15.
14. Good job. 14. 9 movies, 14 duels. Another interesting factoid. Mm-hmm. Which movie does not have a lightsaber duel?
So are you just talking about the saga movies? Because
yes,
like Solo doesn't.
Okay. Not talking about those.
Yep.
I'll give it to you. Last Jedi. Think about it. None of the lightsaber moments in there count. So you have the throne room scene. It's not lightsaber dueling. There's no lightsaber battles at that point. And then the other part is with Kylo Ren and Luke. They never touch lightsabers. Luke isn't there in person. It's not technically a lightsaber duel.
See, I considered... I considered...
Is that on your top one?
Sorry. No, I considered including that in like my honorable mention.
Okay.
Because I thought it was like kind of like... And I thought it was a pseudo duel. I thought it was dually enough.
It was a duel. Okay, so you could probably characterize it as a duel. And maybe I put it on my list just in case. So in that case, it might be 15. But there's still no action. Why are you laughing right now?
I don't know. I just think this is exactly what my wife pictures us talking about when we go in here and we put the microphones on.
This is not important to life, guys. We're like, it is to us. Get off my back. Yeah, this is what we're talking about today. Okay, so
but
whether or not that counts.
I agree. Excuse me. There are 14 duels then, if we don't include that one.
Yes.
So we've picked 5, so maybe the odds aren't as bad as I thought, that maybe they'll overlap, at least 1 or 2.
Maybe just in different order, and we'll talk about them.
Yep.
So, but the point that I keep going around this, there aren't that many, but every single one is critical to moving a very key piece of the plot forward. I mean, even just thinking back to the first one where you have Obi-Wan's sacrifice and what that means to Luke, and what that means to him becoming a Force Ghost and continuing his training in other ways, and then just the coolness factor of this is the first time that we're seeing one. But then you get right after the next one, a father's revelation is what I called it, and then the next one, a father's redemption. Right? These are key points in the plot that are moving forward. You have the rise of Dooku. You have the rise of the Empire from one is the aftermath of one of them. Rey's the Force Awakening and Rey, like they're really critical to a lot of the character development that ends up happening. And then the last one, like the fate of Kylo Ren and bringing back Ben Solo, right? So all of them are really critical to moving pieces of the plot forward, which I think is a really interesting thing for George to use these duels in a very poetic way.
Yeah, and I think evolving the characters too. So like if you look at the duel between Vader and Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi, at the end of that, neither Vader nor Luke Skywalker are quite the same.
No.
So Luke has temporarily given into temptation and let anger take over. In the moment where Palpatine urges him to strike his father down, there's a moment of turning from Anakin. He becomes Anakin again, and Luke is now the Jedi who's been tempted and has survived that temptation,
right,
and held his ground, and in fact throws his saber on the ground at one point and gives in.
Yeah.
And we know how that ends. And I was just rewatching that one today, and it was just so... one of the things that I guess I never picked up on before that kind of adds to the tension is how Vader falls right by that shaft that Palpatine gets thrown down.
Yeah.
And this like dialogue, everything sort of taking place on the edge of this like bottomless pit just sort of adds to all the tension of it. It's pretty well done. But
the story itself is kind of on a precipice, right?
Yes.
Someone is going to die at the end of this.
Right.
It's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, and the first time you see it, you're not really sure who it's going to be. It's not obvious.
No, not at all.
So how do you want to do this? Do you want to trade and say, you start with your number 5, I'll give you my number 5? By the way, people listening at home, in the car, wherever you are, on a plane, we would love to hear your top 5s.
Yes. Send us your top fives.
Send us your top fives. You can do it either through email, thestarburstpodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet us at starburstpodcast. You can just respond to our recent tweet about the subject, or you can send us a direct message, or you can leave a message on our Facebook or whatever else. Come and knock on my door, whatever you want to do. I'm happy to hear you out.
You could call Jan. Here's his phone number. It is
1-800-Saber Duel.
There you go. That's probably too many letters. But before we get to the top five, I have a couple more things I did want to say.
Okay, please.
And then I'll tell you how we'll do this. So first thing, I went through the 14 or so list of duels that are in here, and I came to the conclusion that every single one of them either ends up in someone dying, in someone losing a limb, or a pretty dramatic injury. At least one or the other. Mm-hmm. So they never end well, is my point. There are only a few where nobody dies or nobody really gets injured.
That's funny because when we first meet the lightsaber, Obi-Wan says it's a elegant weapon for a more civilized time.
For a more civilized age or something. Yeah.
Yeah, more civilized age. You're right. Meanwhile, people are just ending up chopped up all over the place. Right. How civilized is that?
It's not as efficient as a blaster, so I guess not as many people die by it. So when it happens, it's like a big deal. I don't know. Let's not think too hard about that.
Yeah, fair.
But there are only, as far as I could count, 3 where nobody dies. Maybe 4 if you really stretch it. Mm-hmm. Other than that, the rest has someone dying, losing a limb, or getting very badly hurt. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
How about we start with number 5? Do you want to get us started?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you, man.
All right, number 5. I went with Obi-Wan versus Anakin on Mustafar.
That's your number 5?
That's my number 5.
Whoa. Okay, Interesting. Tell me why.
Well, so I wrote down a handful of my favorite ones, and then I sort of went through my process of ranking them, and I kind of, I'll show you my piece of paper. There are arrows moving things around. So
okay.
I'm like, this was up here, but now it's got to be down there. So obviously this is a pivotal lightsaber duel for the prequels that sets up the story of the original trilogy. It's basically the birth of Darth Vader by fire.
Okay.
It is the schism, the ultimate schism between Master and Padawan.
Yep.
Between not just Master and Padawan, not just between the roles of those characters, but between Anakin and between Obi-Wan, who were really, really close.
Yeah.
And now are in this terrible environment, in this terrible situation, with a line drawn between them that just will never be healed.
Yep.
And the action obviously is terrific. The setting, the vibe of Mustafar, I remember that was one of the ones I remember being in the theater with my jaw dropping.
Yeah.
Watching that whole thing. And then just how like painful and awful it is to see Anakin crawling out of the fire with his limbs burning. So an epically painful one, I think. Very, very deeply sad. And, the whole thing with Obi-Wan screaming that you were the chosen one.
It's heart-wrenching.
A lot of the memes that you see of like the high ground memes, they're holding back a tear. Those memes.
You're like, let's not forget the next thing that happened after he said that.
Yeah.
Right. He chopped off 3 of his limbs, his metallic arm, and left him to die.
Yes.
Like, it's a rough moment.
It's really rough.
Yeah.
So that one, it's not like it just squeaked into my top 5. Like I shuffled them around and that's where it ended.
Okay.
And sort of like the clock ran out. If this is like, I'm not married to this outcome.
You don't have to be. That's the best thing about top 5.
Thank goodness. Yep. So
in fact, I think my 5th rank will show that a little bit.
All right.
It wouldn't have been there a few years ago.
Really?
Partially because now I'm not going to react to everything you said because we'll talk about that one again later.
Okay.
Because it's on my list. But
I'm going to be surprised if it's your number 1.
Let's keep going.
Okay.
My number 5 is Episode 9, Rey versus Kylo Ren.
Oh, okay, cool.
This one squeaked in, and it was really difficult to choose this one over some of the other ones, the honorable mentions that we'll get to later. But I had to choose it for a few reasons. One, I think the significance of redeeming both characters at the same time. You have Rey that's going down this dark path, and by the end of it, she's redeemed. She's brought back. She realizes that basically the same thing that that Luke realized when he was going down his dark path. Nope, I'm not going to do this anymore. And then you also have the redemption of Kylo Ren at the exact same time, which is to me really beautiful. Then there's the iconography, the choreography of this fight is great. I love just the waves and everything kind of going over the Death Star wreckage as they're fighting and things. It's just kind of a very brutal scene, and it's just, the two of them. They're both in very dark places.
Yeah.
And then it all is also when Leia dies. And that to me was very heart-wrenching to kind of see how her death kind of resonated across the galaxy to both of them, and they felt it in different ways. And the significance of it to me, it was, as I watched it again, I'm like, how do I not put that in my top 5? Now, we both have talked about how The Rise of Skywalker, as we've watched it a couple times, is like, okay, it's not a perfect movie, but there are some great moments in it, and this was one of them.
That's one of them for sure.
To me, this is when the movie really, it's a long time in, it's over an hour into the movie, but that's really when I'm completely involved with it now.
Yeah.
Is because of this battle, this duel that they have. So I appreciate it a lot more, and even just the cinematography and like the part where they were holding back the lightsaber with the Force in their hands and stuff like that, and seeing like the light kind of coming off the lightsaber a little bit. It's just really cool things that they did to make this a fun experience as well.
That's one of the things I thought they did really well in the sequel trilogy, was have the glow and the light of the lightsabers kind of shine the way through the scene.
Yep.
Like the blue saber kind of glowing off of Finn, things like that. I just think that they were done so well. But it's interesting that both of our number 5s, mine is in, just like a really scary, rough landscape of lava flowing around. And yours is on this shaky
fire and water
wreckage. Yeah, this wreckage of the Death Star with gigantic waves crashing against the side of it. Like both of them are really unsettling and dangerous feeling kind of places.
Yeah,
interesting.
The other thing I'll say about this one too is that if you think about it, like there's just been this continuous cycle of like good versus evil, and it kind of ends here.
That's a good point.
And who knows what the future holds, but the Sith are no longer to be around for a while at least. Rey is the only one around with a lightsaber. Who knows what other threats await her in the galaxy? We'll find out.
Yep.
Hopefully at some point. But for now, the cycle has ended.
Yep.
No more good versus evil. It's been solved with this final battle. Let's move on to number 4.
Number 4.
What's your number 4?
My number 4 is one that we haven't mentioned yet. It's Yoda versus Darth Sidious.
Interesting. Okay. So you're basically choosing the juxtaposed fight to your number 5.
Basically. Yes. I think that this whole scene is terrific. So this is the scene where Yoda walks into the Chancellor's room. I think he's still the Chancellor, or maybe he's the Emperor at this point. I don't recall. But
he's transitioning.
Yes, he's evolving, and there are 2 guards by the door, and Yoda just sort of gestures with his hand, and the 2 guards fall down.
Yeah.
And I think he addresses him and says something to the effect of, or should I say Darth Sidious?
Yeah. Master Yoda, you survived.
Yeah. And then, that's where all the cards are on the table. We know who everybody is. We know what's happening. And it comes to this epic fight that finds its way through that sort of like office suite area into the Senate chambers, with all the floating platforms kind of crashing into each other and stuff. And, it's just one of a few moments we get in the prequels where we get to see Yoda really demonstrate his skill as a swordsman, I guess, and in combat. And it's where I think it's this honest conflict of, fine, yeah, I am Darth Sidious, and yes, I did try to get rid of you, and here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna hash it out with our lightsabers now.
It's a very interesting battle because it is the master of the light side versus the master of the dark side.
Yeah.
Like the top of each of their ranks.
Yep.
Going at it. Who's going to win? And that's one of those where nobody dies at the end. Nobody gets hurt and nobody gets maimed.
Yeah.
And the other one is Dooku versus Yoda. So Yoda seems to walk
Right.
away from every battle and not actually hurt anybody, which, what does that tell you about Yoda? He doesn't kill, he doesn't hurt at the end of his duels, and he doesn't get hurt
He's
either.
a pro.
Right?
Yeah.
Cool, huh?
But I think, one of the things I really like about that is Sidious and Yoda were going head to head before. It just wasn't open and honest. Everything was sort of behind the scenes. Palpatine was, trying to do some sneaky stuff and trying to cause some trouble, not out in the open. And this is sort of like where the gloves come off and so do the masks. And everybody is just upfront with their intentions and with their ambitions and with the good and the evil. And it all just kind of comes crashing together.
That's true. Yeah, they're fully out in the open, and we will see who comes out on top.
Yep.
And the fate of the galaxy is at hand.
Yes.
This is a very critical duel.
And I think that's part of the imagery that we see in the Senate chamber of everything sort of crashing down. Not only is he the Senate, but he's going to just destroy every sort of pillar of what used to be a functioning democracy and society.
Because nobody can touch him now.
Right.
There's no ramifications for his misdoings.
Yeah.
He is the emperor. He has declared himself the end-all power, and it's Yoda's task to stand up to him as the most powerful being that would be able to stand up to him in the galaxy.
Yep.
And he fails.
Mm-hmm.
And if that, again, that's where I mentioned the rise of the Empire. Like, that's what's at stake here. If Yoda wins, if the Emperor is destroyed, the Republic lives on.
Yep.
He loses, the Empire is born.
If he wins, it's that meme where it cuts to the credits and it says story by George Lucas.
Yeah, exactly.
It's over.
It's done. It's a disappointing ending, for the whole trilogy. They have to cut away to Tatooine and the two sons just so that we can be happy again.
Right.
And
for a moment.
Yeah, just for a moment. And then you're left kind of with this empty feeling like, oh man, I got to go watch Return of the Jedi so that I know it's all going to be okay.
Yes.
Right. That's an interesting choice. Very good choice. I like it and respect it a lot.
Thank you. What do you got? Number 4.
My number 4, Luke versus Vader, episode 6.
Ah.
Now, it's hard to put this one at just number 4 because it is great. But to me, it's really critical in reuniting father and son.
Mm-hmm.
The anger that is built up in Luke since discovering that he is his father is, coming to a boiling point. Like I said, these duels kind of only happen when there is no other way to resolve the conflict that's in them. And for Luke, it's this, my father's turned to the dark side. I can't redeem him. I guess I have to fight him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to destroy the Emperor, but the one person standing in my way is my father.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just deep and difficult for Luke to deal with. And then you have Vader, who, as we're discovering through some of the comics now, is kind of, he is not Palpatine's favorite anymore. He was the shiny toy for a long time that Palpatine found, and he's not that shiny toy. Like, there's a rift between him and the Emperor. And so everyone's just not in a good place in this duel. And it ends with the redemption of Anakin. So, he went there to save his father and to destroy the Emperor, Luke did, and ended up succeeding, but in a way that you didn't expect. It wasn't this magical Luke comes in, saves his father, kills the Emperor, all is good. Like, his father had to step in and save Luke, which was beautiful. To me, it's actually one of my favorite scenes in all of Star Wars. So, I have to put this one at number 4 for other reasons, but it's one of my favorites. I can't believe it's only on my number 4 sometimes.
Yeah, but no, that's a great one. We may be talking about that one again.
I'm sure.
And so a couple of reactions. I read a quote from George Lucas where he says that a lot of the stories that we really like have a theme of the redemption of the parents, perhaps the redemption of the father specifically, and the redemption of the father comes through the son. And apparently that was a story that was very personal to George Lucas, in that he sort of had that relationship with his dad, and somehow through George's eventual success, I think he had a healthy relationship with his father. So that's something that maybe was slightly autobiographical. One of the things that I really love about this particular duel is that it's not, 3 or 4 minutes of just like straight hacking away in action.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of that, and then there's a break.
Yep.
And there's narration to the conflict, either coming from Palpatine or maybe it's Vader taunting Luke. Like, what is the line that he says? I wrote it down in here. What is the line he says about Leia?
Like, if you won't join, then perhaps she will.
Yeah, if you will not turn to the dark side, then perhaps she will.
Yeah.
And he loses it.
Yeah.
It's effective taunting. There's enough breaks between the action that you can see the taunting. You can see how thrilled Palpatine is that that Vader's been able to draw out this anger from Luke. And now Luke is acting on it, and he's just sort of chopping away at him. And like, so.
Not to mention to some beautiful music in the background too.
Extraordinary
the vocals
music.
At that point really make that scene what it is.
Yeah.
And it just builds the tension the whole time, and it's just, it's so good.
Yeah, that's a terrific one.
Number 3.
So number 3 for me is one that we've already mentioned. It is Obi-Wan versus Vader.
Okay. The first one, episode 4.
The first one.
Okay.
Yep. And this is the one that we just mentioned is like slightly more elegant and maybe a little bit more subdued in the actual combat itself, I guess.
I think people have been very underwhelmed by it over the years, and that's probably the wrong feeling to have. Like, remember at the time, this was huge.
It was huge. And, and it ends with that moment where Obi-Wan sort of gently lowers his saber and allows himself to be struck down. And next thing you know, Vader's kind of tapping his toe.
Where did he go?
Tapping his toe on these empty robes. And we know that Obi-Wan is on his way to becoming a Force ghost and sort of becoming one with the Force. But we saw a meme recently that kind of tugged at my heartstrings, which was...
gosh.
I forget how it was set up, but it basically said something to the effect of, maybe Obi-Wan looked up and saw that Leia and Luke were reunited and realized that, or that was the last thing he saw and realized that he could sort of pass away in peace.
Right. To see them reunited at last when he was the one that basically gave birth to them.
He was there in the room. It was him and the nurse droid, and that was pretty much it.
He separated them. It was probably really difficult to make that decision.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
They're not going to grow up with each other. He looks over, he sees them together, and he's complete, and he can go now.
He's fulfilled his journey.
That hurt.
Yep.
To think of that.
That stings, for sure.
But it's also beautiful, and it hurts in a good way.
It is absolutely beautiful and moving. And again, the Obi-Wan who went into that fight is not the same Obi-Wan on the way out. The one on the way out is sort of ascending to be a Force ghost. He's transcended his, in quotes, earthly mission. And then I think, that must be a big, we don't get to see a lot of what's happening inside of Darth Vader / Anakin, but that must be quite a moment for him too, to finally strike down Obi-Wan after the journey that they've had together.
That they've gone through. Yeah. We'll talk about that again, but I can't agree with you more. That one to me is, I have to just say it now because you will be surprised, but it is not on my list. It was bumped out from my number 5 by the one that I put the Rey and Kylo Ren after I thought about it. But to me, it's a special one because it's what starts it all.
Yes.
Right. If you think about the movie, I love the scene where Luke turns on the lightsaber for the first time in A New Hope. And he's kind of just waving it around and you're hearing the sounds and he's just kind of mesmerized by this. Like, that's how I was mesmerized by this thing on the screen. I'm like, I want that. Make that, please. Give me now, please.
Yes.
Now. Like, that was kind of how I felt. And then the next time you see in the movie, it's chopping off somebody's arm. You're like, okay, so this thing is pretty powerful. And then the final time, it's clashing with another one. And the sound effects, like the choreography's nothing compared to some of the stuff they can do today. That's not fair to compare it to something we can do today. But it's still beautiful and stands on its own as a great duel.
Yeah.
The one that introduced them all, the one that got it all started. And that to me is significant.
It's really, really, really important in the grand scheme of these duels in the story.
Yeah. My number 3.
Your number 3
is Episode 1, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon versus Maul.
Ooh.
So I put this one at number 3 because, to be honest, it's almost difficult because at first when you watch it, I just was like, this is just a really cool duel. The music is fantastic. Duel of the Fates, right? One of the best pieces of music that we get out of Star Wars from John Williams.
One of my favorite pieces of music ever.
Of all time. It's so fantastic.
And by the way, do yourselves a favor.
I knew you were going to say this.
And go to YouTube or look up Duel of the Fates kazoo cover.
Yeah. No, I liked the acapella one just a little bit more. But, oh, man, that got me.
Because in the acapella Duel of the Fates, they do a really faithful rendition, and they also do the sound effects.
Yeah. And they laugh during it, too. You hear them laugh like they can't hold
They
it
can't
together.
take themselves seriously.
I showed it to my wife last night, and I don't think she found it as funny as I did.
No?
No, but I was dying.
Yeah, I love it.
But Duel of the Fates makes it really good. The fact that you see Maul, this really cool character with horns and stuff like that, was fun. The double-bladed saber and the fact that he's fending off 2 Jedi at the same time, like all that was just really cool. But I think Filoni made it even better this past year when during the Mandalorian making of series for the first episode or the first season, he started monologuing. Remember that monologue where he starts talking about like the significance of this lightsaber duel and the fact that they're battling for the fate of Anakin?
Yeah.
And what's going to happen to him? That brought a whole new dimension to it that I don't think anybody respected as much beforehand. Yeah. Like, again, praise Filoni for thinking about that. And that stood out to me this time as one of the reasons why it's as high as it is on my list.
Yeah.
Not just because the choreography was cool. Not just because the music was great, because it actually has significance to the story.
Big time.
To Obi-Wan, especially, losing his master, being on his own, being thrust into the role of now taking care of Anakin, and he's not ready for that.
Yeah.
And that, it decides the destiny of Anakin before he's ready for that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well said. So I agree with everything that you shared. I love the music. I love the action. I love the poignancy of what is being fought for. I think there's a lot of little things along the way, too, that really work well for me. The red force field barriers that pop up, that essentially cut off Obi-Wan from Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
That, to me, is sort of symbolic of the end of the relationship or the end of Obi-Wan's ability to sort of lean on Qui-Gon as the sage master. And he can only watch from a distance as Qui-Gon is struck down. And then when the barrier opens again, he's alone. Qui-Gon isn't there and available for him anymore.
Right.
So little things like that jump out at me. And just, there's a lot of different angles you could come at this duel from, and all of them are satisfying.
Well, even just the aggression that Obi-Wan is showing as he's going out. Like, he's like jumping, shaking. He's like, I'm ready to just take you down. Like, he's kind of tempting the anger within him a bit.
Yep.
And then the choreography that ensues is just brilliant.
Yep.
So, what's your number 2?
My number 2. Let's see here. My number 2 is one that we've already discussed, and that's Luke versus Vader.
Okay.
In Return of the Jedi.
Perfect. What's your angle?
I think probably all the stuff that we've already talked about, but most importantly, the family, the dynamic of Darth Vader coming back to become Anakin at the end of this and to become Luke's father again, become a father to Luke, and puts himself in harm's way to dispatch with the Emperor to save Luke's life. And as a result, ends up sacrificing himself.
Yeah.
So, like I mentioned, I love the pace of it, that there are sort of breaks between the slashing and whatever else where there's the taunting and the dialogue and so on. But to me, it's the poignancy of the family part of the story that happens here that is the redemption moment for Anakin, which I know people struggle with. I know people struggle with, can you be redeemed in a moment after all the stuff that he's done? But in that moment, for that moment at the very least, he's the best that he can be for his son and for himself, to be his true self.
I don't really feel like it's fair to judge a good action that someone does in a moment based on the other actions that they've committed.
Yeah.
That one action all by itself is good.
Right.
Right. And the thing that people are questioning is it good enough to redeem him? You know what? We can't really be the judges of that.
He ends up a Force Ghost.
Right? But he's always been conflicted. And he's always been dealt a raw hand.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And he does what he can with it. But I personally think he's redeemed in that moment. Like I think he's earned it, and I think he's gone through a lot to get to that point. And yeah, he's made some bad decisions along the way. He's done some pretty bad and questionable things, but give him his moment.
Yep,
I think it was. Yeah, cool. My number 2,
please.
My number 2 is Vader versus Luke, Episode 5.
Oh,
you sound surprised.
I'm not surprised.
Okay.
Go on.
It's surprising that we haven't talked about it. Maybe you're going to talk about it again next. I don't know. But to me, this one is so important. And not just because of the stereotypical, no, I am your father moment at the very end. But because it is a very significant battle because of that. Eventually, it gets to probably the plot point that sticks in everybody's mind when they think about Star Wars. But it's also because of, like, this is the first time that Luke is really being put to the test. And what he's learning as he's becoming a Jedi. And he's going up against the biggest foe that you could go up against in Darth Vader, the biggest threat in the galaxy that we know to this point. Mm-hmm. And their battle is interesting. It's really kind of it's a bit of, I don't think Darth Vader is not putting all of it into it because he's trying to trap him in carbonite, right? But then he gets impressed, like he gets away from that. And then the tone of the battle changes from there. It's Darth Vader kind of showing him up left and right. And it first starts with, let me show you everything I know about the Force that you don't. And he's throwing stuff off the wall at him, and it's brutal. Mm-hmm. And then when they reconvene down on that other platform, Vader's completely hammering away at him. And you can see there's an aggression that Vader is using at that point. Like he is out to hurt. And think about it, he knows this is his son too.
Yeah.
Right? And it's
pretty dark.
It's a very dark battle, but it's also a big step up. Like think about it. It's a big step up from what we got in New Hope. I think they really took care with this duel.
Yeah.
And the aftermath is infamous. Luke, or the I am your father.
It's one of the most iconic things. I think one of the images that I always have in my mind when I just think about Star Wars is Luke kind of hanging on for dear life over that bottomless pit on Bespin.
Yeah.
The wind blowing. And I like that there are all these parallels with that scene in Return of the Jedi that we just talked about.
Yeah.
Where they're on the ledge. You know that somebody's going to fall one way or another. Somebody loses a hand. And, there's that family conflict that's on display between father and son.
Yeah. It's deep. It's dark. Mm-hmm. It doesn't end on a good note. It ends on a bit of a sour note.
Yeah.
But what it does for both of these characters and moving them forward and making Vader human. You didn't think about him until human until he revealed that he was the father of this person.
Yeah.
And now you think of him as a human with flaws and things like that. Totally different view of Vader now.
Right.
And then Luke, who just got this big revelation of who his father really is and what really happened to him, and it turns his world upside down.
Yep.
And so very character-defining moments here.
Yeah.
Do you have any honorable mentions?
Honorable mentions.
Before we get to our number ones?
Yeah. So I had, the first one that I had was, not strictly speaking, a duel.
Was it Luke and Kylo Ren?
It was not Luke and Kylo Ren, although I really like that one a lot. But I just really love the Red Throne Room scene from The Last Jedi.
Yes.
That there's a lot of lightsaber elements. The way that they take out Snoke is with the lightsaber.
Yep.
They kind of hack away at the Praetorian Guards with their lightsabers. So to me, that was lightsaber action, which I think deserves an honorable mention.
Totally.
Another honorable mention from the sequel trilogy, Finn and Kylo Ren.
Yep. That was my honorable mention.
Was it?
Yep.
Just really cool
and
moment.
Rey, throw Rey in there too.
Yeah, really cool moment that I would love to see continue in some way, meaning like, in the Christmas special this past year, or the Life Day special, I should say, we got Finn as a Padawan training.
Yeah.
And developing into what is sure to be a terrific Jedi Master. I'd love to see more of that, and that was sort of the spark in the beginning.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And then just the way that it was shot with, like you talked about earlier, the lighting on...
Amazing.
We kind of saw that in Attack of the Clones with that part where Dooku and Anakin are dueling and they cut the the electric wire and all the sparks are flying.
Yeah.
You see the glowing. Like you see some of that, but not in the way that the forest scene really brings it out. And so tip my hat to JJ for that, and making that such a beautiful scene. I get goosebumps every time Bray gets the lightsaber.
Yep.
Like it's a beautiful moment. So that's in my honorable mentions as
well. Cool. So those are a couple. What else did you have on your list?
I just mentioned one of them, and my other one was actually Dooku versus Yoda.
Ooh, good one, yeah.
And the reason why I did this is because I remember the first time seeing Yoda wield a lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole movie, you're thinking, why did they turn Yoda into CGI? Why would you do that? Oh, this is why.
To do that, to flip in the air and whatever, yeah.
Yeah, like it was just so cool. I remember seeing that in theaters and being like, Yoda is fighting! Like just like going crazy over cool. that. And so excited. Audience you didn't see, but I was just bouncing on the couch. Like
you sure were.
Imitating how I was as a 15-year-old, however old I was when that movie came out. Maybe it was 15. So yeah, that one is my honorable mention just because seeing Yoda wield a lightsaber for the first time was truly unique and special.
Yep. Cool.
So what is your number one?
My number one, we've already mentioned, and that is Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul in episode 1 with Duel of the Fates playing in the background. Maybe it's bad a cappella, maybe it's a kazoo cover, maybe it is the John Williams classic, but for me it's the conflict, the story, the action, the music, the details. That's just a super high quality choreographed fight scene.
And the return after so many years of Star Wars being away, and that was the first one you get back. It's special.
It is special for sure. Like, so
what
love
would a
that
lightsaber duel look like today?
Yeah.
In 1999, when it's been 15 years or plus since we got our last Star Wars movie.
Yep.
Right. Sorry, I keep interrupting you.
That's okay. So for all the reasons and more that we've already mentioned, that one is, it's one that if it's on, I cannot look away.
Yeah.
I just get sucked right into it, and I got to follow the whole thing. And yeah, I absolutely adore that one.
You know, the first time that I showed that episode to my kids, first of all, I don't think my daughter watched it. She got scared and left the room and then came back to watch it the second time. But my son wanted to watch it again.
Nice.
He loved it.
Jack gets it.
He totally gets in it. He was just like, what's happening? Like he was asking all these questions.
Cool.
And it sucked in a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
Because it's a great duel. I'll give you that. You ready for mine?
Please.
And you said it at the top, and I can't believe
really
that you said this. My number one is Obi-Wan versus Anakin, episode 3.
Ooh.
Your number 5.
Nice.
Now I have to explain why, and I saved this. So the choreography is amazing, even just the way that it starts.
Truth.
And it being only Sith deals in absolute. I will do what I must. You will try. Gives me goosebumps every single time. Then the choreography is amazing, like I just said. The iconography with the everything in the background, the lava flow and stuff like that. It's long, and it feels like it's really milking it for all it's worth at this moment because it is a very deep battle. We talk about how they're juxtaposing it with Yoda and Sidious fighting at the same time, and they're fighting for the fate of the galaxy. Mm-hmm. They're not fighting for that. They're fighting for the fate of democracy. It's an idealistic fight, a bit more. Which side matters more, democracy or totalitarian rule? And they're just different perspectives. But there's significance on a personal level to George Lucas in this. And let me tell you why. When I watched this Anakin or Darth Vader and Obi-Wan fighting in episode 4, there's a line that Vader says. He says, he says something to the effect of, the circle is now complete. When we last met, I was merely a learner. Now I am the master, right? But that line, the circle is now complete. This was George Lucas's last film. That was his first one. That was his first duel. This is the last one that we see that George Lucas led. So for George Lucas, the circle is now complete. He has revisited the first one that he gave you on camera and is now going to give you his last one. The same 2 characters going at it a little bit younger, a little bit more spry, a little bit more spring in their step. And it's intense, it's brutal, it's personal. And because of that, it just feels more real. It just feels... I can't even explain it. It feels like this was very personal to George.
Yeah.
As he was writing that.
And it seems really personal to the characters. So there's all these layers of, again, like what I really loved about the Yoda versus Darth Sidious was how honest and out and open it was.
Yeah.
I am who I am. You are who you are. And in this case, it's sort of the same thing, but Anakin's kind of giving in to some ego and darker appetites, and he's sort of coveting the possibility of what he might be able to do with this power and so on. He's giving in to temptation in some ways.
Yeah.
But in a very raw, honest way. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm going after.
Yeah. And you feel that tension throughout the whole entire duel.
Yeah.
And it ends in such a dark way. But again, I feel like just that raw emotion is what makes this such a good duel. And I can't even say how many times, like the cinematography and how much it evolves over the fight. Like they just keep making it different. And
the fight kind of travels around. It's not like stuck in one spot.
Yeah.
The setting is just perfect. It wouldn't be the same fight if it was like on Naboo on a sunny day.
Yeah.
It's just
true.
the darkness, the contrast of the sabers against just the dark, I guess, molten lava and lava rock and all that stuff. It's just the tone and the vibe and the feeling of the imagery is on point.
Totally. And if it weren't for the fact that I think this was so personal to George, maybe I wouldn't put it so high. But it's that high because of not only all the good things I mentioned, but how personal I think it is to George. I mean, think about, this will be the last thing I say. All the duels
ever
wow. done after this.
Listen up, kids.
I'm going to be mute. No more talking.
This will be the Star Bro show.
Yeah, there. And it's just going to be you talking to me about Star Wars and be like, okay, nod my head, yes.
Along.
But so looking at all the movies, in episode 4, you get one duel we talked about. You get another duel in episode 5. You get another duel in episode 6. In episode 1, you get one duel. Episode 2 is the first time when you get 2, but they're sandwiched back to back. Dooku and Obi-Wan versus Anakin, and then Dooku versus Yoda. Episode 3, George crammed 5 duels.
What is he, crazy?
What is he doing? Like, he crammed it in. These mean a lot to George.
Yeah.
And to be that ambitious, and each one of them being as special as they are. I mean, you picked 2 from that one?
Yeah.
So they're special and they're important. So anyway, that'll be the last thing I say.
Excellent.
Take us home. What is our next episode going to be about?
Our next episode. So we're coming up on, believe it or not, Star Bros family. We're coming up on 1 year of the Star Bros. So in July, we will celebrate our 1 year anniversary of the podcast. And we couldn't be happier about it. And we appreciate that you've been along for the ride thus far. And hopefully you stick around for other cool stuff to come. But we're going to go back. We're going to do a look back, a retrospective on what started it all. We're going to look back at Star Wars: A New Hope.
Yes.
And I think we're still kind of evolving our thinking on what that might look like. But I know you just picked up a terrific book about the making of A New Hope.
It did.
So I think we're going to dig into all the aspects of it. You know, why did this movie capture our imaginations? 40 plus years later, here we are sitting on a couple of couches still talking about this stuff. And you know, there's special things that happen. There are special things about A New Hope that we just think it feels like it's time to go back and talk about where things started.
I agree. And it's a matter of, it just seems like it's a good time to do it as we're doing a retrospective on our own podcast and the first year that we have to kind of think about where, not just where our podcast began, but where all Star Wars began.
Yeah.
And how special it was, the risk that it was to venture into this movie and for George to take and trying to create it. So I think there's a lot to uncover, and I'll definitely be diving into my book and seeing if I can pull out any fun tidbits to share with the group, because it's a big book. I'm not going to get through it all, but I'm sure I can find some cool stuff to share. So thank you as always to our listeners. We're glad that you're on this journey with us and that you're interested in the conversations that we're having enough to listen from front to end. Please send us your top 5 lightsaber duels. We really want to hear them and talk about it. If you think that we left one off and it's a complete sin that we did so, you'll probably call me out for leaving out Obi-Wan and Darth Vader in episode 4. Please reach out to us. We've told you where that is. The Star Bros Podcast at gmail.com, Star Bros Podcast on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook, and I think I've hit them all. right?
Yeah, and if you enjoy the show, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Smash that subscribe button. Go to YouTube. Check out the BROAXIUM channel. We've been putting up all of our latest episodes on BROAXIUM, so you can, kind of have the video playing in the background while you're working or whatever else. And also, if you like it, leave a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or wherever else it is that you listen. That helps us out a lot, and we love to see whether or not folks are enjoying it, and specifically what people are enjoying, because we love the Star Wars community. We love interacting with you guys. We love hearing from you. So as always, the email inbox is open. Let us know what you're thinking about. What Star Wars stuff are you excited about? Send us your favorite lightsaber duels or whatever else it is that you want to talk about, or whatever you want to hear us talk about. This is our show. We share it with you guys, so we're happy to have you take part in it in any way. But thank you for listening. And I think there's one more thing.
There is one more thing.
There's one more thing that I think needs to be said with gusto.
Oh, gosh.
It's a wrap!